Yeah, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Left Fresh podcast. Happy Saturday. Hope everyone's enjoying their weekend. It's the 10 o'clock hip hop Saturday Night Live episode of the Left Fresh podcast. You can find me on Instagram at This Is Left Fresh. You can find me on TikTok at This Is Left Fresh. All my new people on, welcome, welcome. Encourage you all to subscribe, like, comment, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. Those who are already subscribers, welcome again. Got a great hip hop episode lined up for you all. Uh, Recorded on Thursday, this past Thursday for the sports episode, and it's going to be Thursday again for the next sports episode because Wednesday is the actual game. The Knicks and the Spurs in the finals. I'm not playing around with those views on that episode. Everybody's going to be watching the game, including myself. So just heads up throughout the finals, maybe a quick series. Hopefully, my Knicks is up 2-0. So on Wednesday, we'll be watching the game. Thursday, I'll go live and talk about it as opposed to the typical Wednesday 9 o'clock episode. It'll be a Thursday 9 o'clock episode throughout the NBA Finals, as long as those games are on a Wednesday. Like I said, it should be a short series. But yeah, welcome to the hip hop episode. Got everything lined up for you all. Got some good stuff to talk about. Interesting current events. Got somewhat new album releases, but got some pretty good discussions to talk about things that went on online, different things that went viral and everything, and brought up some interesting stuff for me to discuss here with you all. So appreciate you all jumping on. And without further delay, let's jump into it. We're gonna start off with some hip hop album anniversaries, albums that came out as long as 30 years old, albums as long as 20 years old, and some pretty recent as 5 years old. Just three of those notable ones that stuck out to me. We also got like I said, a somewhat new release or deluxe version of Freddie Gibbs' album. I'll dive into that a little later on as well. I got a list from Complex and a re-ranking list from Complex. I love to pick apart lists and discuss certain artists that, get a little credit, give some flowers to them and everything like that. That's my main point of looking at the list. Uh, and then in this particular instance, we got a re-ranking of a list that was decided and voted upon by the people. Not sure which people, how many people, or what panel is decided upon, but we'll get into that a little later on as well. And got another head to head between two great lyricists to talk about it towards the end. But like I said, without further delay, let's start off with the album anniversaries. I'm gonna start with the OGs first. This is an OGs delight right here. Pretty, throughout the years, like I said, it came out 30 years ago on Thursday, June 4th, 1996. Very key year. Why? Because that's one of the greatest years of hip hop releases of the 90s, let alone hip hop. And 1996 was just a year that was just loaded. So it's 30 years since then. Like I said, we already discussed All Eyes on Me a couple months ago. Uh, got a couple other anniversaries coming up. Some, towards the summertime and the fall, that's when it heated up back in 96. It looked like. I mean, that's when all the anniversaries are really going to pop up. Later on this month, just a heads up, it's going to be that Reasonable Doubt 30-year anniversary. So definitely going to tap into that and revisit that. Of course, it's a classic. Everybody should know it, but just for those that don't, we'll have a good discussion about it. Maybe compare it to some of the other great classics that's out there, but that's further along the line. But this one in particular that just came out, East Coast, you know, slept probably slept on nowadays. You know what I'm saying, with so many other classics that came out in the '90s and came out, like I said, in the midst of all the heat that came out in the '90s and everything. This album right here kind of fell, under the radar a little bit in later discussions because the group, wasn't too much longevity after this one. But I mean, this group right here, made their way, got their name out there at a very, very, very competitive time. As far as just a volume of great music, the Lost Boys. This album released in June of 1996, Legal Drug Money. Uh, the name, kind of doesn't really doesn't really grab at you really like that. But I mean, if you look at the album itself, like had two real bangers, and I'm not really saying like I wouldn't go back and say it's absolutely a classic. I would just say that it has one real classic song on there. He had some, pretty solid hits and everything like that at the time for the time. Not sure how much it aged now, but I mean, got one song in there that just aged perfectly. I mean, And it's just kind of like one song is definitely classic, and here it is right here without further delay. Number 6, Renee. This song right here was probably one of the most underrated hip hop love song tragedies ever. This right here, storytelling was top tier. Renee, girlfriend, love affair. That you know, yeah, Mr. Cheeks definitely did some storytelling on this one. Yeah, Mr. Cheeks is a wild name to say in 2026. You know what I'm saying? But he's still, he dropped a legendary song, legendary single right here. He also did he had a solo run too with Lights Camera Action too. That was another club banger. That was one thing about the Lost Boys. They can definitely make some club bangers. Number 4, Jeeps, Lex Coupes, Beamers in the Benz. That was a 95. That was like a 95, 96 classic right there for the time. You know what I mean? Like that style back then was like that real East Coast, camouflage outfit, Tim boots, you know what I'm saying? The Tims, everything. Like that was the height of the 90s right there. And they came in through the height and they gave us like two legendary singles. I mean, Jeeps, Lex Coupes, Beamers, and Benz. I mean, like I said, you know, you think about it now, like, yeah, Lex Coupe, Beamers, Benz, like, now everybody driving raves and different luxury cars. Back then, though, those Jeeps, Lex, those cars right there were luxury cars back then. You know what I'm saying? In the 90s, you had those cars, you was doing it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I like this. I've actually listened to it in traffic this week. Yeah, man. Like music makes me high was a good joint too. Track 3, the beat on there was crazy. I like the beat on there. Um, you also go to Lifestyles of Rich and Shameless, the remix right there, that was pretty good. Straight from the Ghetto was alright too. This was a pretty solid album. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I said, it came out at a height where like a peak where it was like a bunch of great albums coming out. You know what I mean? It was a real high demand for hip hop. That demand for hip hop grew to like a high level and everything. And like it really, this album really personified like New York in the 90s though. Especially when you seen the videos and everything. That video was probably my best part about track 4. I love the video, the Jeeps, Lex Coupes, Beamers, and the Benz. Like you look back at it, like those cars were like luxury cars back then, man. You had one of those cars you was doing in the 90s. But yeah, man, like yeah, the Lost Boys, 30 years ago, this came out. I was like 10 years old and everything like that. I remember all the OGs in the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens, all the 5 boroughs and everything. This was they had some bangers on here. And like I said, Renee, um, powerful record. If you play that one nowadays, like I said, storytelling was top tier. Still can hit to this day. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't really like the entire album, you definitely found a single on there that hit, and it was like Renee was definitely the one that's the most timeless one on there. That was probably the one that hit the hardest. But like, yeah, they had some bangers for their time though, man. Definitely had their bangers for their time. Yeah, y'all. If y'all just jumping on, please subscribe, like, comment, share, tell a friend, tell a friend. Those who just jumped on, the regulars, appreciate y'all for jumping on. Yeah, man. Lost Boys, we got to jump into the anniversaries to start the show. And we got now the 20-year anniversary. This right here, 20 years ago, if you think back, like 20 years ago, definitely different from 30 years ago. 20 years ago was like a big shift, like in hip hop, where like not only just regionally, where the South was really cooking, but the dance songs and the dynamic of those dance songs was like, really just taking over like the mainstream charts and everything like that. Everybody, it was a high demand for dance songs. And you remember the ringtones and all type of different. But yeah, I mean, this particular album right here is like again, like I said, not known for the album at all, if anything. But it had a dance song that got Grammy nominated. Um, like I said, in the crunk music era, transitioning to the snap music era. This guy right here came and just kind of went to loving hip hop and radio. Young Jock, Young Jock, New Jock City was released 20 years ago this month. And this one right here, like I said, is pretty much known for the single. The single that got nominated for the Grammy, yeah, it's going down. You know, you had to be there for the time. Like this dance song was absolutely classic. Whoop, not that one. Um, but yeah, this one was absolutely classic. Jock had the city on smash, had the whole country on smash with this song. I mean, football players were doing it for celebration. That the motorcycle. You know what I'm saying? Like Jock had everybody doing this joint, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Had everything on Smash, man. Like during that little period. And then I mean it opened up a run for him too, because he had a couple other singles. It didn't do the same as, you know, uh, it didn't do the same as It's Going Down. Though. It's Going Down was the absolute hit. Though. You know what I mean? It was the absolute hit. Yeah, man. I mean, had everybody doing that dance. You know what I'm saying? It's Going Down featuring Nitty, Do Your Bad. I remember that single too. Jock had a quick little wave, man. Yeah, young Jock, 29 years. Wow. Yeah, it is. I mean, like, 29 years ago, you was up here. 20 years. Yeah. And then, oh yeah, Dope Boy Magic. Yeah, 20 years ago, if you graduated high school, you was in the club, that beat came on, everybody ran to the dance floor running to do the whole, to do the little motorbike thing, do the little motorbike dance, we do the little twerk, little thing, the little dance move everybody do. Like I said, I see football players doing it. That dance took the whole country by storm. And they almost won a Grammy for best song. That was at that point, like I said, where the dance songs really became in high demand. Definitely wanted to hear more of those. Once, like I said, D4L, Laffy Taffy, and all that good stuff came out, like that was in high demand at that point. But yeah, this album right here, it had a couple other club songs and everything like that, mostly, just little quick club bangers and everything like that. Young Jock kind of came and went in a wave and everything. But that, yeah, 20 years ago, everybody was in the club doing the Young Jock dance, the motorbike. Another sleeper single that I like, and it's not on Young Jock album right here, but it was the it kind of sounded like Wipe Me Down a little bit. It was Zoom with Lil Boosie on there. Young Jock and Boosie right there. That was the one right there that had it in the club. I was like, I had a nod to that one though. That Young Jock one had everybody running to the floor, um, doing a little motorbike dance. Yeah, that's 20 years ago, 2006. First time, sheesh, yeah, yeah, 20 years ago. And then, and now more recent anniversary, just 5 years ago, back in June 2021, year off the pandemic, we had a joint project, Voice of the Heroes, with Lil Baby and Lil Durk. These two, pretty much at the height of their careers, collaborated, and I can tell you right now, the beat selection on this one was top tier. Like I really thought the beat selection between the two and their chemistry. I mean, they do the melodic rap and everything like that. The voices and all that stuff too. So they found beats that kind of matched them and their flow and everything like that. I was surprised, like they came together. Yeah, 2040, hats off. How it feels, yeah, man of my word. They had some good beat selection on there. Um, I felt like they was kind of oversaturating the market at that point. So it was kind of like, not so much running out of gas, but it was just a lot of work that was kind of saturated at that point. So this one kind of fell under the radar a little bit more. But yeah, going back to it like 5 years later, yeah, I like the beat selection on there most importantly. But they have some catchy songs on there too. Like I said, 2040 was pretty good. Hats Off was pretty good. Hats Off with Travis Scott, yeah, that was pretty good. You know, like I said, Still Running with Lil Durk and Meek Mill. Yeah, that was another good album as well. I mean, this wasn't that bad. But yeah, that was 5 years ago. We already passed the halfway part of the decade. We in the end of the 2020s headed towards that. So yeah, if you like me, you're getting old, which is cool. I'm cool with that. It's a blessing. But yeah, we got the recent joints, we had the past joints, we had the stuff to hit that 20-year mark. We had some pretty good anniversaries though. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think in '96, we get back to those 30-year anniversaries throughout the course of the year, we're gonna really come across some heat. Like I said, 1996 pretty much was a deep year. Like I said, Tupac, All Eyes on Me was pretty much the premier album so far at this point in '96. But like I said, we had Reasonable Doubt. And at that point, Reasonable Doubt wasn't, what we know Reasonable Doubt to be. Reasonable Doubt came out, it was like little known compared to anything Tupac or Biggie released, anything like that. Jay-Z was still, making that transition to, you know, becoming a star and everything like that. So, and you know, he had Biggie on there and everything too. So he had a dope appearance and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, you know, it was pretty cool though. Um, Now I'm gonna switch over to an album that not really so much an album that was necessarily released, but this was an album that was released maybe like 2 years ago. That has a deluxe version that was released in which a couple more songs were added to it. This artist right here, like I said, is one of the more underrated artists of the 2010s. Still making music, still in the 2020s. Just released the album last year that might be Grammy nominated again. From Alfredo to Alfredo 2. But this one right here, Freddie Gibbs, the deluxe version of You Only Live Twice. Um, this one was released in 2023. I mean, You Only Die Once. Pardon me. You Only Die Once. This one was released in 2023, and now we got the deluxe version in 2026 that was just released Friday. Had a couple extra songs added to it, which basically compiles a whole disc. If you watched last week, he dropped the RBT, a trio of singles, you know, EP, which are now on this addition to this album. Track 3, Action, was talked about last week. Immigrants, track 5. Uh, Rabbit Mode, track 9. But this right here is a nice little addition to it. I mean, like I said, you heard the first out. If you heard the first edition, it's on disc 2. This one right here, this came out 2-3 years ago, 2023. I like this one right here. This was a solid project. Um, Not one of the go-to Freddie Gibbs projects that you would go to though. I would usually go to Pinata. I would probably go to Bandana. Like I said, Alfredo 1, Alfredo 2, but this was another solid Freddie Gibbs project because he doesn't make trash projects at all. So yeah, I mean, I still went back and revisited this one as well. You know, Wolverine, Cosmo Freestyle, on the set, Origami. I mean, I actually look back to this one. I was like, yo, this was actually a pretty good album. This actually was pretty smooth listening all the way through it. Um, like I said, the name of the album is You Only Die Once. Like I said, and this one has a couple of extra songs added to it, which I appreciated. Summertime Homicide was pretty good as well. Freddie Gibbs is pretty balanced with his projects. I mean, you're going to get some good beat selection. You're going to get a unique flow that he could change up. Uh, yeah, I'm definitely big on the Freddie Gibbs discography. Like I said, even the best part, even the not so best part of Freddie Gibbs discography is still really good discography. So yeah, I heard this one on Friday. Checked out a couple of the bonus songs. Basically, that's how I kind of looked at it too, like bonus songs. I was feeling it. But like I said from last week, you know, these are 3 of the same songs I heard last week too. And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for an album, Freddie. You know what I mean? And I know you just came off the Alfredo 2 album with Alchemist and everything like that. I know you still doing that, but they ain't stopped you before. You hit us with a barrage of albums before, waiting for another album. You know what I mean? These editions are cool. You know, I'm still go back and listen to a couple of them again, revisit. But yeah, I mean, you know, it was a dope release for Friday and everything like that. It was the most notable release I had for Friday. You know, um, but yeah, pretty dope though. And like I said, those who just jumped on, thank you for jumping on. Subscribe, like, comment, share, tell a friend, tell a friend. Um, you know, Left Fresh Podcast. Find me on Saturdays, 10 o'clock p.m. Talking hip hop, discussing hip hop, any type of current events, new releases, album anniversaries, album discussions, debates. I'm all for that. You know what I mean? You can find me in this time Saturday night, 10 o'clock. I'm going to transition now to a big viral event that, you know, all it takes for a certain particular person to do anything and it goes viral. And that particular person is none other than Jay-Z. Jay-Z performed at the Roots picnic last weekend, Saturday night, and he had a freestyle that went pretty in depth, went pretty long, and it shook the internet. Everybody's still talking about it right now, as they should. Hove kind of just got a lot of stuff off his chest in that brief time, acapella, almost battle rap style. You know what I mean? Hove just kind of went to the Roots picnic of all places. You know what I mean? Like that's a pure hip hopper's domain out there. You know, photo ops with Dave Chappelle, Questlove, and everybody. You know, all the real grungy hip hoppers and everything. Like Hove kind of let everybody know he kind of went back to the essence on that one. I think that was pretty strategic in itself. But yeah, I think that it was a pretty cool freestyle. Hove getting in there, getting active, nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people had a lot of different opinions as well, had a lot of varying opinions. Some people thought it was great. A lot of people writing think pieces about it. Some people are almost offended, triggered, and firing back still. It's either you can't please everybody, but there's a good people that clamored about it, and there's a good bit of people that opposed it. You know, especially if you're a particular fan base of particular artists that he talked about in this. And I'm gonna get into who he addressed. Those who already seen it, you can chime in. Those who haven't, here it is for you. Um, yeah, Hove got on there. Thanks to Independent Dope page for giving me the photo out. Jay-Z disses Drake and Nicki Minaj and Dame Dash and Tory Lanez and Jaguar Wright and more. More meaning, lesser known people like Oskino from State Property. Yeah, Jay had a lot of venting to get off his chest. And he did it a cappella, like I said, at the Roots picnic. Let everybody know, listen, I'm a hip hop. I'm a hip hop at the end of the day. I don't care how far off I am. I will still step down and get on the stage and let everybody know. It don't matter age, is nothing but a number. Ain't nobody more pissed off. Yeah, a lot of people got, yeah. You know, you want it, a lot of people, they mention Hove in interviews and lines and hip hop lines and everything, lyrics and everything. You got it, you wanted it, you got it. I'm not gonna play the clip, but I can give you a couple of bars that Hove kind of spat up on stage at everyone. So, I went to the 97.9 The Box page and they went up there and decoded the bars. I went and listened back through them just to make sure they make sense, anything like that. And most of this pretty much adds up. Like I said, Hove went up there and responded. Important to say responded to a lot of the chatter about him and everything. First of the list, let's go down the line. The jig is up. I'm up 10. No, sorry. The jig is up. I'm up 10. Wrong chart, champ. Looked up to Hove. I never looked up to them. And I can tell you right now, there's a little bit more to that line. The part where he said, they got your publishing gangster. He said, I never looked up to them. They got your publishing gangster. Go talk tough to them. That publishing line, no need to try to decode who's he talking to. He's talking to Drake. Drake has some choice bars to throw at him on his album, on his Iceman album. Talking about I'd rather take the 500K. There's nothing you can learn. I can't learn nothing from him. Talking about Hove. The jig is up. That was a line that Jay-Z responded to where, when Drake responded that the jig is up. Well, Jay-Z responded, well, the jig is up. You know what I mean? Let him know, hey, all right, you got something at me, I'll throw something back at you. Like they said, the meaning from 97.9 The Box says a direct response to Drake's recent Iceman era lyrics about older rappers and the phrase the jig is up. Jay's reminded listeners that younger artists grew up looking up to him, not the other way around. Point made. Bar number 2. The rock's not crumbling. Leprechauns have run out of pranks. Your son is in a federal jail mumbling something about having too much in his drink. This is aimed at Tory Lanez and his father's son, Star Peterson. The having too much in his drink reference ties to Tory's claim that alcohol played a role in the Meg Thee Stallion shooting. Number 3, I really get under skin. Ask Unha I'm playing. References Lance Rivera, the music executive Jay-Z stabbed in a 1999 nightclub altercation after Rivera was suspected of leaking Volume 3, Life and Times of Sean Carter, before its release. Number 4, it's going to cost you a B to say my name. B works as a double entendre for both $1 billion and Beyonce. It also flips Destiny's Child hit Say My Name while highlighting the Carter's family wealth and influence. Number 5, Quest introduced me to Jaguar. I don't know why I still F with him. Representing Questlove introducing Jay to Jaguar right years ago. It appears to be the response to her years of accusations and criticism of Jay-Z and Beyonce. Yes. Number 6, that Chatty Patty down on his luck again. A jab at Dame Dash, whose financial and legal troubles have made headlines for years. cancel the brunches. I remember the hunger pains. Jay saying he is comfortable walking away from the industry friendships and celebrity circles. He survived before the fame and can return to that mindset if necessary. Everybody thinks everybody thinks they the one insane. You know, maniac. Watch out, Saniac in my presence. Shrink. A clear shot of Kanye West. Jay Jay is saying Kanye's behavior changes when they're in the same room. Okay. You ever heard of Wonderkin? My children, some of them have no shame. A wonder kid is a child prodigy or someone who is achieving extraordinary success at a young age. Jay is defending his children against public criticism and reminding listeners of their accomplishments and potential. Yeah. I mean, in fairness, Jay-Z's always a talking point, even when he's not speaking. I mean, I got to be honest with you. If I have, in debates and everything, I usually, I like to give my optimistic, opinion when it comes to how great Jay Z is and objective, and when it comes to who's nice, who ain't nice, and everything like that. But in typical battle form, I know Jay Z spoke out against battling, and a lot of people are saying, well, isn't he somewhat battling right now? No, he's responding to people. You know what I mean? Like this dude does literally. I can't think of anybody that he talked about unprovoked. And finally, like I said, he picked to me the best venue to do it at. You know what I mean? He lets everybody know, like, hey, I'm gonna go over here with the Roots and Dave Chappelle and all the hip hoppers and everything. You know, that kind of gives me a sign of rejecting a lot of the industry stuff that's taking place right now. And I'm gonna be honest, Drake, you know, he came back. He came back with an album, rose back from the whole Kendrick beef and everything like that, made an album, is getting streams right now. People still listening to it, is, doing numbers, doing everything you expected it to do because everybody's waiting on the Drake song for the summer. The bars where he's replying to everyone though is interesting because, you know, and I'm not saying that Drake can't hold his own lyrically, but I mean, there's still, do you really want do you really want that with Hove? And Hove is like 60 years old, not ducking any smoke though. You know what I mean? And it's like he throws some sharp jabs too. You know what I mean? Like, before you diss me, man, get your publishing back. You know what I mean? And that's a sharp jab at a dude that's like a successfully streaming artist. People call him legendary goat. And it's like, you know, saying there's nothing you can learn from me. And then he responds back like, hey, you're publishing, you gotta get your publishing back. Don't talk gangster to me. And it's like, that's probably one of the perfect clapbacks to there's nothing I can learn from you. But that's like I said, Hove looked like he finally had enough of, everybody the chatting, Dame Dash. He had another line about Dame's teeth falling out. I'm not going to beat a dead horse about it, but yeah, he basically alluded to dude's teeth fumbling, dude's teeth tumbling. That's, Hope was actually just going in his bag. I mean, and then speaking of just random other people, like I said, guy Skino from State Property who's still kind of resentful of Jay Z and everything like that. Um, Jay letting everybody know, like, hey man, I'm still whole. I still got bars. Some people were saying, hey, it was mid. I think the standard for Hove is really high, and I think people just live to troll as well. Like, I can't say it was the best thing I've ever heard either. I mean, I'm not saying it's like '90s Hove or the best Hove ever or anything like that. It was just funny that Hove got up there like an inactive player and just dropped a straight freestyle, and people clamoring about it. So I mean, it's good enough for people to talk about, and probably got just as much buzz as Drake albums, and that says a lot. I mean, no disrespect to Drake's albums because Drake albums is everywhere, but that Jay Z freestyle kind of got a lot of people's attention, and even a lot of Drake fans have responded to it. So I heard a Drake fan say, well, Drake bars got to be something. Jay responded to it, absolutely, and as a Drake fan responding to Jay Z's bars, it had to be something to respond to as well. It's not like people are laughing at it or anything like that. It's like, hey, he came at everybody. So yeah, Jay Z came up there, freestyle last week, unloaded the whole clip. Uh, just gonna move on to the next thing. Speaking, typical Hove, like I said, I don't think it was one of the greatest freestyles I've ever heard in my life, but he just addressed a few things. Um, Still, like I said, a lot more better stuff came out of Hove. A lot of better stuff came from Hove spitting out, spit it. So, and that's the reason why he's one of the greatest to ever come out of the city. And speaking of greatest to ever come out of the city, um, Complex, comp, the magazine label, the magazine, the online hip hop, platform usually comes with a list that everybody can fight of. Hey, I just think, bro, sick of, yeah, yeah, man. I mean, hopefully they know he's still, he's a hip hop at heart. And he's going to express himself the best way he knows how, which is bars. Um, but yeah, complex hip hop platform usually comes with a list for everybody to fight about. Only reason I play with these, like I said before, is just to look at a list of names, think of who should deserve their flowers. Um, Maybe there's somebody that's overly discussed, but this time around, it's not the list itself; it's the re-ranking that followed it. Um, Maybe like a week and a half ago, Complex dropped their top 50 best New York rappers of all time, and I feel like they've been doing that for like the last 5 years. They've just been doing the same list over and over again. Feels like it's pretty a repeat. But more interesting than not, there was actually a re-ranking by them. There was a re-ranking where they felt they went out and I guess gathered a bunch of fans and asked them who are their top artists from New York City. And it's not a completely different list, but it's definitely a varying order. And I think a couple of the names on the re-ranking list would surprise some people, but I wasn't really surprised with it because there's certain artists from New York that a lot of New Yorkers are partial to, and especially at different time periods that maybe people may have been sleep on them. So I like to look at the re-ranking after looking at this list. As you see this one, I've talked about this one before. Some of these names are egregious and everything like that. Um, no disrespect to some, but I think Complex did what they could, try to get the past, present, like you said, all time is kind of tough to just gather up and measure off of whatever criteria that they have. But I'm gonna now show you the re-ranking from it. So you get one last look at all of this list. You look at the order here. You got Jay at the top, of course. Complex is gonna have him at the top. You got Biggie, you got Nas, you got Rakim, the R. You got I seen both these lists and they're both fake. Yeah, I think the lists are pretty much like Fugazi. I think the list is kind of like just a bunch of names thrown together, but they did capture a couple of artists who were pretty slept on the re-ranking. I'm gonna show you the re-ranking. Yeah, you see, yeah, Giza is loved and everything, but he's on 32. I mean, it's kind of a weird way to put an order. Get to the re-ranking, and the re-ranking, Nas is number one, rose up 2 spots. Biggie still number two, then changed position. Rakim is still number three. No, number is now rose up to number three. Jadakiss has rose up 12 spots to number four. I mean, really, the top five dead or alive moniker really lives to exist in this re-ranking right here. I mean, honestly, I'm not too opposed to people really thinking that Jadakiss is top five. I mean, most people, and guess what? It's not off of albums or anything like that or discography. People just love bars in New York. Yeah, I feel like artists and fans don't even read Complex. Yeah, I mean that's a good decipher right there because it's kind of hard to believe that there's a KRS fan that, but you know what? There's a lot of people who probably stopped listening after particular legendary artists and follow Complex. Like this is like Complex is really that tapped in. You know what I mean? Like there's people who probably stop listening, don't even listen to current hip hop. They probably listen to these older artists, stop really listening, just probably follow the page and whatnot too. So I'm pretty sure they compiled like some votes that may have been pretty honest. Because if Jadakiss is that high up on the list, then this list is basically based off bars, and New Yorkers love bars. I mean, verses, features. I mean, it's not even so much the album. You know what I mean? It's more or the discography or the beat selection or deliveries and flow like it is in some other cities. Like New York is like some of that hard literary bars. You know what I mean? Switch your words up, punchlines, metaphors, something that really hits, cleverly. So Jadakiss on a re-ranking rose up 12 spots. Um, New Yorkers do love Jada, and especially after verses. I can see that stock rising after that verses. Locks versus Dipset versus. So yeah, fans are fans. Jay-Z fell 4 spots from number 1 to number 5. Jay-Z's still a top 5, but wow, I mean, I wonder if these fans are outside of New York as well. But Jay-Z's still top 5. I mean, no matter where you rank him, no matter where you debate him, I mean, yeah, I can't see Jay-Z falling out of a top 5, maybe even top 3 still. I mean, that's a debate. Yeah, I mean, that's a realistic that Jay-Z's at least top 5. Jadakiss literally being top 5 with, and I dare I say this, without a real true classic album is really just a testament to how much people love Jadakiss as far as a lyricist, as far as bars. Rakim, we pay homage to Rakim just for being, the legendary, coming from the golden era. Big Daddy Kane, surprisingly not on the list. KRS-One is on the list. Those type of artists are OGs. KRS-One rose 1 spot in the number 9 from top 10. I think people really just pay homage to those artists strictly because of, pioneer points. You know what I mean? Not saying that they can't hold their own, but they're not saying the skills ain't there. You know what I mean? But people just really pay homage to them, just off of re-ranking. Like I said, this is mostly just a popular vote. And yeah, Rakim is always going to be up there out of homage. DMX rose 2 spots. A lot of people, DMX touched a lot of hearts. DMX is kind of like Heart of the Streets. So yeah, no surprise to see him at least in the top 10. Right outside the top 5, 50 Cent fell a spot. 50 is a hit maker. One of the best hit makers to come out of New York. Didn't really have a lot of longevity. Just a really, really, really high peak. Just a really high peak. And, you know, one of the things I think that really keeps 50 from breaking into a top 5 is kind of like, the same thing that put Jada that far up. Like 50 sold more records almost than anybody on his list and still not in the top 5 because, you know, lyrically, 50 is not a bad lyricist. He's not a bad lyricist, but these are all beasts ranked ahead of him. You know what I mean? And even DMX, he doesn't even get known so much as the lyrical beast, but his delivery, his discography, yeah, we're BDK. Big Daddy Kane, another pioneer. I mean, Mount Rushmore. This is a tough one. I mean, this is tough to kind of squeeze, all these great New York artists. And then we went from 50 to just a 10 to a top 10. So yeah. Prodigy. Listen, usually Prodigy is associated with Mobb Deep as, one of the greatest hip hop duos in history. Um, the production of Havoc, bars too from Havoc, but Prodigy is typically known as a member of Mobb Deep. But Prodigy went on a solo run. First off, Prodigy also did a lot of feature verses. Does a lot of feature verses, did a lot of, solo albums as well. Prodigy's solo work is highly appreciated regionally in New York, especially in the 2000s after, Mobb Deep's pretty much heyday. That 2000s period, especially like in the mixtape era, yeah, Prodigy did gain a lot of popularity in New York. I mean, he had a lot of popularity in the first place, but yeah, he really maintained a lot of popularity through his solo catalog as well. So, you know, it's controversial, but Prodigy was one of those in New York that had a big popularity, had a huge popularity about him. Like I said, yeah, this is pretty much names I can't debate. LL Cool J fell 3 spots. I mean, LL, another one, like 50 Cent, discography highly appreciated, and he had a longevity. LL had a lot of longevity. I think a lot of OGs will still probably fight for LL to be a little bit higher up in that top 10. I feel there's a New Yorker on Stanford Complex, and usually gave that top 10. They ain't asked the fans. Yeah, I mean, I think they might have a panel to vote upon and everything like that. I think a lot of times they're not. People kind of just vote on people they really just like as opposed to what they think is the best. You know what I mean? Like it's tough for people to have an objective opinion when it comes to something as subjective as music. So like, especially in something competitive as hip hop, people have their metrics, people have their reasons, and they don't always be the same. So it's always tough to really kind of see these and react to them. But I just look at these names and just say, like I said, Rakim, KRS-One, and just look out the names who aren't mentioned and call those out and give them flowers as well too. So that's always my approach to these. But yeah, Complex. I guess they wanted to add a little more clamor to the clamor they already create. Um, the re-ranking, like I said, a new name that's probably higher up in people's top tens that most people don't think about outside of New York is Prodigy. KRS-One and Rakim, those are names you're always going to get their flowers from. Like I said, Jadakiss broke his way into the top five of New York's hearts, according to Complex. Um, According to Complex, Jay Z is not as popular as many people would have guessed. Maybe that's a recent thing here. LL Cool J also not as high up on people's lists as people think. But like I said, this is all presented again, but it's all debatable. It's all subjective. It's something to fight about. Y'all jump in the comments for the people who missed the live. Let me know how you feel about it and everything as well. But yeah, the last segment for the night. Very interesting one. Something that got a good buzz online, especially amongst the lyrical listeners of the hip hop community, the people that listen to the lyrical lane of hip hop. Um, this ain't about any dance songs on this one, respectfully. This is about just straight up who got the most bars between an elite legendary lyricist and an elite now veteran lyricist who kind of on the younger end of the veterans. Um, One artist I talked about album just dropped, 38 Spesh. Last hip hop episode last Saturday. I talked about his album being released. It was a good one. A couple tracks had Dave East, Method Man on there as well. But yeah, I talked about 38 Spesh. Like I said, great album. Um, but after the album, I believe he had an interview where the name of the album, Eight Shots, too, for those who didn't know. Go look it up. Eight Shots, 38 Spesh. Talked about it last week. Look up the prior episode. You can see me talking about it. But yeah, he had an interview discussing the album and the music and everything and the features. And the topic of came up was that he hasn't done a track with Jadakiss since 2009. I mean, nine. I'm sorry, 2019. He hasn't done a track with Jadakiss in 2019. That's 7 years ago. And that track was a track they were both featured on. Album Benny the Butcher's album, Plugs I Met, came out 2019. This one right here had 7 songs, produced by Harry Fraud. Not this one. This wasn't produced by Harry Fraud. I'm sorry. Part 2 was. Plugs I Met was a 7-song album slash EP type album. It was a real short one, but very much enshrined in Benny the Butcher's discography. I can tell you that right now. All 7 tracks are pretty dope. You can go ahead and listen to it. But particularly track number 3, Sunday School. Jadakiss and 38 Spesh both featured on Benny the Butcher song. All 3 of them had a verse. They all went crazy on there. And that was the last time Jadakiss and 38 Spesh did a song. 38 Spesh, like I said, released his 8 Shots album last week. And what he's saying was, it's kind of like a friendly jab at Jadakiss to do another song with him because he said, Jadakiss asked him to send another song. He sent it and Jadakiss didn't respond. 38 Spesh made a bold claim that it's because Jadakiss got outshined on the song Sunday School that I just featured. That 38 Spesh, who had a great verse. 38 Spesh had a great verse. And many people did debate that he had the better verse. Many people still debated that Jadakiss had a better verse. That's why we're here now. 38 Spesh made the claim that Jadakiss didn't want to get outshined again, basically just trying to ruse him into come on, getting on another track, trying to prompt him, trying to nudge him into jumping on another track. Jadakiss responded on social media in the comments, basically said, I think he had a mushroom or something. And then eventually told him, hey, send the track, man. Just stop doing these interviews. And, 38 Spesh joked about it and everything. But yeah, it did spark a little discourse about, who had the better verse on that particular song, who had the better, who was better bar for bar. If 38 Spesh may have evolved past the slightly older Jadakiss, or if Jadakiss is still that guy. Me personally, by the time I was in my preteens, 12, 13, I realized Jadakiss started breaking through, on the mixtape scene when I was growing up in New York. And it was like I said, on the bad boy times with Mace and Biggie and, you know, doing a whole bunch of features, ripping everything lyrically and everything like that. And I remember saying to myself, even as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, like Jadakiss got bars. Like Jada nice. I mean, you on tracks with Biggie and Mace and you holding your own. You on tracks with DMX and you holding your own. You're doing features and mixtapes and everything. You holding your own. Like I said, back to the, you know, top New York rappers list. Jadakiss probably won't be known for a particular album or classic, anything like that, but he's known for just continually, just throughout the last 20, 30 years, just ripping verses, ripping tracks, individual singles, just pretty much a legendary as far as in the realm of lyricism. Jadakiss is pretty much as legendary as it gets. Um, at the same time, 38 Spesh is heavily respected as well. He's more of a younger, lesser known lyricist because we're in the streaming era. You don't see his verses on Rap City. You don't see any. He's independent. In this day and age, a lot of the best lyricists are not signed, are not on the major deals. May get a distribution deal, but he's not a major artist. He's an independent artist, and he's heavily respected by many of the great lyricists, from the vets to the younger artists. He's got features from Method Man on this particular album. He had Dave East on his album. Other albums he's had features from, you name it. Other great underground lyricists like Ransom and Rock Marciano and everything. He's also a producer. 38 Special is also a producer, great producer as well. But lyrically, he's got punchlines for days. He's got double entendres, setup bars. You know what I mean? A lot of the content is strictly street stuff and everything like that. But like kind of like what Jadakiss did with D Block in the 2000s. They're more along the same lane of artists. And I've always said Griselda is kind of like that. Get that same type of love that the Locks get. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that 38 Special not with Griselda, but a lot of things in that Griselda realm these days, from Conway to Benny the Butcher, 38 Spesh, a lot of them they do a lot of work with each other. Ransom, they all do a lot of work with each other. And it's like that iron sharpens iron. And they're a new breed of lyricists. Like, lyricism didn't just die in the 2000s. It picked up and it kept going forward. I think a lot of people kind of, especially us as, OGs and 40-year-olds and everything, we see that era of Jadakiss and Fab, and then even the big three. Now you got, J. Cole, and Drake, and Kendrick, and everybody breaks down their bars and lyricists and lyrics. And then there's other lyricists that fly under the radar. It's kind of like that, even when Jada and them was at their best. When Jada was at his best, he wasn't always the most commercially known. 38 Spesh, he's not the most commercially known. And a lot of that is because 38 Spesh is not exactly the best artist. He doesn't have, he's not exactly the best delivery. I've seen people say he breaks down a math equation when he raps. You know what I mean? 38 got bars. He could set it up. He could pen a verse with the best of them. He doesn't deliver them the best. And his beats are pretty good too, but they're a little more for the past era. You know, but when it comes to lyrical debate, when we talk about 38 ain't even in Jada's realm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen tracks, big like you seen the duo album with Benny and the first duo album with Benny and 38 Spesh, um, Stabbed and Shot, the first edition. And they had that track with the driver's seat with Jadakiss and Styles. And Benny and Spesh took turns going back and forth. Jada and Styles took turns back and forth. You know, I see Benny and Spesh was going back and forth probably as good as Jada and Styles, but it's still going to be debatable. Like Jada is never going to be at a place where you know you can't debate his verse against 38. And I appreciate 38 saying what he got to say to get the buzz, keeping things competitive and everything like that. But I don't think you'll ever have a time where you have a unanimous decision that you smoke Jadakiss on a verse. People always going to debate for Jada, and a lot of that too is because of Jada's past resume. Jada's laced so many verses that people always going to listen. A little more praise and a little more love because it's Jada. People ain't never going to say Jada's verse was kind of weak, anything like that, and he never does anyway. It's not going to happen. I don't think Jada ever had a weak verse. You might have a verse that stands superior to others. You have some that may not hit as hard as the others, but you can't really say a Jada verse don't hit. And it's kind of the same effect with 38. Yeah, 38 was definitely trolling. He was trying to get Jada to come outside. You know what I'm saying? 38 been active since 2019. You think about the work 38 put out since 2019. He done put out about 7 projects, either joint projects or solo projects. 38 put out an extensive amount of projects. So he's looking for Jada, like, everybody been on my track with Jada. And he was joking about it and everything like that. It's friendly trolling. But people really entertain the debate because, people respect what 38 is doing. And people even respect what 38 doing and saying, nah, you know what I mean? That's kind of where it's at too. You can still say, nah, but I do like what 38 is doing. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to artists out this era right now, especially in this lane where all the mainstream music is pretty much melodic, everybody's sing song rapping, all the beats is kind of like, trap and techno mixed together and everything like that. The beats kind of going in a different direction as well. You know, here in the lane for for the audience that's used to a different traditional throwback MC type of rap, you know, I definitely, yeah. People revising history like always, yeah, man. I see this all the time. People, especially on these interviews and blogs and everything like that, people take every chance they get to try to revise history and everything like that. But I respect this debate for the culture, though. I mean, like I said, these are two MCs that clearly respect each other. 38 still pays homage to Jadakiss. Jada's a pioneer for lyricists like him in his era and everything like that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Then we debate Conway versus Joe Button next to say Joe wasn't good. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I said, I think it's like people gotta respect the eras. You know what I mean? Like this era still got some dope lyricists out there and they're flying under the radar. And that's the context too. People not only respect the eras, but understand the different context in this era. Because 20 years ago, I think Griselda and all these lyricists, they probably be the dopest rappers on the mixtape next to Jada. They be right there next to Dipset, G Unit, and all the other artists, all the other factions at that time because they have the bars to do it. I still don't think they'd be as commercial. I mean, they got signed to Eminem in 2015. They probably be one of those artists like on the side of D12 and just be spitting hard mixtape raps and everything. It probably won't go multi-platinum like Locks and all of them never went multi-platinum and anything, but they had the mixtape scene on Smash. They had an audience like none other as far as mixtape go. Like people devotedly bought Jadakiss, Styles, and Chic mixtapes and Locks mixtapes. And it's the same thing with Griselda. They both from both factions from upstate. 38 not officially part of Griselda, but from the Rochester area. Raps a lot with Ransom as well. Both of them, like I said, I don't see any of them ever winning Artists of the Year. I don't think they have like that type of flow, delivery, and all that type of different artist aspects to it. But pen and verses, yeah, they can write some stuff that'll make your face kind of squinch up a little bit. Like, yeah, there's bars there though. There's definitely bars there. But like I said, it's tough to get your name put over a legend like that, especially you're still working and you're putting out work. And then there's people who probably hear your stuff and be like, yeah, yeah, he better, man. You know what I'm saying? React to the moment. Some people might be stuck in nostalgia. You just got to find that in between point. Be like, I think there's a couple of tracks that he could get Jada on, but overall, yeah, that's gonna be a debate all the way to the end. I mean, that's a 15 round fight, and still might get Jada the split decision because you got to go back to some of Jada's old verses too. And it was like, it's easy to say you outdid Jada in 2019. Outdoing Jada in 2001. See, that's another thing. If you take them back then, they would did very well on the mixtape circuit and getting a little buzz and everything like that. Probably getting a couple songs out there too. But the competition was also steep too, because Jada and them was at their best in the early 2000s. The punchlines was flowing. They had a bunch of dudes out at the time too. You know what I mean? So, you would think back to, yeah, you going against you going up, you playing around with 2026 Jada, 2029, 2026 Jada, who still got it. But this is a guy who put out 20 years worth of work before that. And when you say who's better, let's go back to the old days and it can really make it nice and interesting though. But yeah, it's something nice to, have a joke at and, listen back to the bars and everything. Y'all check out 38 Spesh, man. The album 38 Spesh, 8 Shots came out. Go check out his previous discography. He's been dropping a whole bunch of music all the way throughout the 2020s. And he got that throwback East Coast style that, a lot of East Coasters, listen to today's music like, nah, it's not for me. Well, if you never heard of him, check him out. If you have, continue to check him out. Dope stuff. But that's my time for the evening all. Hope you all have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back on Thursday. discussing sports. Hopefully, my Knicks close out the series by then. I'll be back next Saturday at 10 o'clock, same time, to discuss more hip hop, got more content, more music. Looking forward to hopefully more anniversary hip hop albums, or just albums to revisit in general. Just whenever I get whenever I get the urge to. Got a lot of content for the summertime, man. I appreciate y'all jumping on with me. You can find me on Instagram at This Is Left Fresh. You can find me on TikTok at This Is Left Fresh as well. It's the Left Fresh podcast. Yeah, Nixon 4, baby. Sweep time. Break out the brooms. But yeah, it's the Left Fresh podcast signing out, man. Y'all have a great evening. All right. Peace.